much about Mr. Trump, who is running for president, but something that he said a couple of weeks ago and said again today during a press conference regarding the African American vote. And I quote, Mr. Trump said that African American youth have reached a pivotal point where they've just about never done more poorly in our history. There's no spirit, there's killings on an hourly basis, virtually in all places. No hope. There's been no savior in Obama. Why will they support me? They're gonna support me because I'm gonna give them two things that no one else heretofore has given them: education and jobs. We know that the data says high school dropouts in African Americans are up. African Americans who start college by junior year drop out, no money. And those that don't go to college are not getting skills, job skills, by the time they graduate, and are not getting any skills thereafter. So what are they gonna do? If you can't get a job and you gotta eat, what are you gonna do? So my question to you, what are we going to do to help ourselves to have a voice so that a particular presidential candidate is worthy of our vote? Who would like to take that question?
I guess the mic is in my hand. I'll take a shot at it. Again, as the injustice agitator on the panel, I think one of the first things we got to do is be honest about the Constitution. That being that when it was written, it didn't apply to us. Since its writing, it has not applied to us. Our answer is not a simplistic one, but in my heart and in my mind, I think that it has to be one where we have to start thinking in terms of what we're gonna do for self. And we have to, I think it's imperative that we begin to think about what we're gonna do for self. And that self cannot be a selfish self. It has to be us as a collective. I think that in the 25 years that I've been in Mississippi, the one point that I've tried to stress is the Nguzo Saba, 7 principles of Kwanzaa. And I think that we have to internalize those 7 African life principles into the spirit of our children, into the spirit of our adults, and then actually begin to live them and not depend on the Constitution. That would be my perspective.
Again, I think that we have to start at home. And so we have to address some of those issues right here at home. And if we're unable to address them here at home, then how are we going to galvanize and address them elsewhere? So we can't skip the state and look to the federal government to fix everything for us again. We have to, again, start at home. So I too believe that there are issues that, again, we have to deal with here at home. And particularly, we're talking about the same issues of education, you know, empowerment of our young. We have those same problems here. If we can at least decide how we want to address them here, then maybe we can also address them on a larger scale. For me, Mississippi has, I don't know, the majority of African Americans in the country. Jackson and Hinds County has the majority of African Americans in the state. And yet, we're struggling with our public education system. We don't address education issues, we don't advocate, we don't address healthcare issues on a large scale in our state. I don't think so seriously, and that's in my own opinion, of course. So we have to deal with these issues. When I ran for governor, of course, one of the first questions I got is, where are you from? Which is the same question I got when I moved to Mississippi, believe it or not. Who's your people? And where are you from? I mean, I don't care where I went. I don't care if they were black, white, woman, or man. And I started to think about that today when I was asked to speak on the panel, because it really, you know, I never really have thought as much about it before. But considering that could be a separating issue, so the question becomes, how separated are we, or how united are we? And that's why I say we have to examine ourselves and decide who are we and what do we want, where do we want to go, who do we want to be? Being reactive doesn't work very well, and chasing issues doesn't work very well. Being proactive and preventive, to me, works better. Sometimes I'm told that about the numbers, percentages that we are as African Americans in the United States, but again, it's about the unity and the power. I spent several years in Tanzania, high school and junior college. Tanzania and many African countries, as you know, are multiple tribes in each country, multiple. So if we just take Tanzania, multiple tribes in Tanzania, how is it that in Tanzania, they're united enough to fight for independence? They're united, they're still united with the multiple tribes. So they had a president who worked on unity in spite of all these tribes and different languages to look at a bigger picture to move the country forward, as opposed to somehow he was able to jump over or avoid or deal with the separations of the different tribes. And that got me to thinking today. So that's just something I want to share. And again, to me, all these issues make up the whole. So we look at the issues separately as opposed to they are the whole individual, they are the whole family, they are the whole community, and they are the whole state. And I think somehow we can again pull the issues together and prioritize and rank, then we might be able to come up with what it is that we want and what direction we want to head in. So for me, I'm more about the survivability, our human survivability, and Earth's sustainability, which to me is our Garden of Eden that we're just eroding. And I started looking, I always talk about quality of life, not so much as being a health expert, but simply quality of life, well-being. But then there's also quality of death, because we talk about death. So we have a lot of death, which are ways that we really don't want to die. So we also have to look at that, I think, when we're considering our priorities and addressing our what we want and what we want to attack.
I'd just like to add that, not being sacrilegious, Dr. Johnson, but we are the savior that we've been looking for. And I'm gonna tell you what I mean by that. I'm a child and student of the Civil Rights Movement. And one of the things we did, when we marched, we sang, "We shall overcome." And I remember when President Obama was elected in 2008, so many African Americans were crying, felt that we had overcome. Now all of our answers, all of our questions would be answered, all of our needs would be met. We put it in Obama's hand and we sat down. We did not work within our communities to unite us for common causes, and we don't need to look to the federal government anymore. We don't need to look to other sources anymore to solve our problems. We're gonna have to figure out how to solve our problems internally. Being a student of the Civil Rights Movement, one of the things that we were marching for was desegregation. The right to go anywhere, the right to stay anywhere, the right to eat anywhere. We were successful in tearing those walls down. What do? We move to where white folks are because we think they have the best standard of living. We go shop where white folks shop. Jackson, majority black, does not have large shopping centers here, does not have anything to hold people here. And one of the things you might not realize is that the federal government gives money every year for the last 25, almost 30 years for roads. And they give it based upon a formula for statistical metropolitan areas that have large minority populations and are economically deprived. Most of that money was supposed to have gone to the city of Jackson and Hinds County. But the state of Mississippi, through the way the system works, they don't give the money locally. The federal government gives it to the state, and the state disperses the money. And what the state did was set up different committees where they included Rankin, Madison counties, and all these surrounding counties. And most of the money that was supposed to go on to building roads and streets in Jackson and Hinds County has gone to Rankin County, Madison County. Economic development has gone to Rankin County, Madison County. And what do? Folks in the city of Jackson, we run out there to spend up those tax dollars. So the tax dollars that could be spent here in Jackson, building Jackson up, we're spending them in Rankin County and Madison County, building those communities up. And then we want the federal government, President Obama, please save us. We have to save ourselves. We have to figure out how to start doing things for ourselves and not depending on the great savior anymore. Even if President Obama had done something, he was going to be there 1 term or 2 terms. The U.S. Constitution says you can't serve a president longer than 10 years. So 8 years was as long as he would have been there. If he had done the greatest thing for black folks, then we were going to be right back in the shape we're in now. So we have to figure out how to improve our own lives without depending on any savior to do it for us. Earthly savior now. I'm not here to say earthly savior.
So one thing I didn't mention when I was introducing myself is that I actually started doing some expert witness work back in 1992, 93, I think. I was in graduate school, and Attorney Rose probably doesn't remember meeting me down at the grocery store down here off of Meadowbrook. I know you don't remember that, but I was trying to get some data to actually help with my dissertation. So this guy's really an icon. I'm sure everyone knows that, but we don't typically give credit to folk like Carol Rhodes. I mean, it's Henry Kirk's, it's just unbelievable what they did and how folk have been elected supervisors, city councilmen, how they changed the whole, I could sing his praises all night, but I just wanted to make that point. And now I actually do work for him. I'm glad I'm home. And Peter Stewart, actually, when I was writing my dissertation, we were standing out when Harvey Johnson had gotten elected. That was my dissertation. And I still remember this, I think I put it in my dissertation. He said, we just had an election of a first black mayor, and I don't know whether or not we're gonna be the next Atlanta or the next East St. Louis. And that was deep. And we still, I think, in that, middle lane in terms of which way do we go. But real quick, I've always talked about education. And people, I sort of misconstrue what I mean when I say education. I think I'm talking about formal education. I was doing some research on black architecture and looking at whether or not people would, candidates were blacks, and candidates with natural hair versus straight hair versus twist out, so on and so forth, and how would African Americans respond, based on colorism. And I kept on mentioning during the presentation, education. And I think everyone took from that formal education. And I'm not speaking about formal education. I just came back from Israel, and this was, really, just life-changing. I've gone to Ghana to the door no return, and that was life-changing. This was life-changing. I got a chance to spend time with the Hebrew Israelites. And we talked about them being cults here back when Yahweh been Yahweh, but it wasn't them, it was the Hebrew Israelites. They have 3,000 people there now. They started with about 200. They have a community, and the most profound thing that I heard was when one woman said that my son is 32 years old, and he has never buried one of his friends. The community, they have a video out that you should see, the Village of Peace. It's unbelievable. Now, when I started talking about, having an intervention where we could bring more of us over there, he said, now if you bring too many of them, we're gonna find a way to leave. But the community was just so, it was unbelievable, the love that they had for themselves. And that's the biggest thing that I think, and the most important thing that I think, when we can try and instill in, it's not, I don't look at blacks as a monolith. So I don't say us, so to speak. It's that select few who want to be us. And so if we can strengthen their racial identity, it can actually combat that internalized racism. Because they get this internalized racism daily. They get it through the textbooks, they get it from the music. So anyway, next.
Okay, and I feel like a baby on the panel. So not talking about age, but I'm glad I get to sit with these people who've been doing this work for such a long time and who are so highly respected. And I really, truly value being here and even being able to speak. So I'll say that first. I will speak from my limited 27-year-old perspective, okay? But because of what I do, I think I have an interesting perspective, so I'll share that. I work at the Capitol here in Mississippi, so I deal with state, local politics, right? I lobby for an organization that is not popular in Mississippi. I work for the American Civil Liberties Union. We push for the civil liberties of all Mississippians. So clearly in Mississippi, I am not the most popular lobbyist over there. The way you get popular and the way that you get respect and pass your bills through is by one, respecting you as a lobbyist and who you're lobbying for. Who are you here for? Who are you asking me as a legislator? Who are you asking for? What group? What group wants this? Typically, if you are a Republican lobbyist, they're like, oh, okay, then I know you're representing a company or you're representing this community, and I know they vote. They come out, they turn out and vote. And if I don't vote the way that they want me to get some more money for farming and that industry, things that affect them, they're gonna get me out of here next election. And I don't wanna be out of here. So you know what, when they come, I listen because I don't wanna leave. So I would say, number one, we need to invest in our own power as a community. Because when I go over there and other lobbyists and other groups who want something, they look at me and they say, and? They don't say it out loud. They don't say it out loud, but I know the look on the face is, and why do I need to give you that? And so the answer for these other groups is, you need to give me that because I'll get you out of office. My people vote, and you want to be here. Or it's because I give you money. So one, investing in our own power, empowering our elected officials. Same thing with President Obama. When he got there, he can't do the heavy lifting by himself. It's we have the House and we have the Senate. If you don't give him the support characters to vote his way when he brings something forward, then he can't pass it. So he can conjure up all those great policy he wants that'll never go anywhere. Same thing on the state level. We have black legislators who want to do good work. They will vote the right way if it gets to the floor. But before something gets to the floor to be voted on, it's got to come out of both committees. And they don't have the power to get it out of the committee because they're not appointed as a chairman, or there aren't enough of them on the committee to get it out of there. So their hands are tied as well. So you can't lean just on our black legislators on the local level. You can't lean on them. And on the federal level either. We look to them and say, well, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. You haven't empowered me. Because once you all start voting, and once you all start raising money, I know we think we don't have a lot of money or we don't have a lot of capital in the black community. But once we start voting, and once I would say this, the intra-race relations, I know you mentioned before, I don't exactly know what your work is there, but I know what I've noticed that gets on my nerves. I'm a young black person from Eudora, Arkansas. It is right there on the edge of Louisiana. I go through Tallulah, and I'm right there. So 2,000 person town, I'm right outside of Greenville. I was born in Greenville. I'm right there. So that's where I'm from. Now, I go out and, the first thing they'll say, well, you from where? You're not from here, are you? Don't think I'm from Mississippi. Or, no, I'm not from Mississippi. I'm from Arkansas. Really? Thought you were from the East Coast or something like that. Because you don't seem like you're from here. So I think we've gotten caught up as young black people in trying to fit the part and fit the standard, move into the communities. I can wear what I want, or I can dress how I want, I can look the part, I can send my kids can play soccer with their kids if I work at the right firm. I think I'm living the dream. And then I turn on the TV and I see Ferguson, and I get on Facebook and I talk about how barbaric they are and how silly they are, because it makes me look better, or I'm on a pedestal, as opposed to, I'm not that type of black person. I'm not that person, and so I'm somehow better. If anybody in here has done that, I'm sorry, I'm probably offending you, but we have to stop doing that to ourselves, because although I don't endorse rioting, what else do you do when you're a community like that and no one is listening to you? No one cares about you. Your own people get on Facebook, they tweet, they want to be social justice activists for a day and say, I'm not like them, you know, because, hey, I drink Pinot Noir and I go shop at the Renaissance or wherever. But, you know, we've got to stop doing that. We've got to invest in our own communities, give our legislators power, elect people on the local level, and then they have to listen to you at the Capitol. The only way I got anywhere, I was a first session lobbyist, and I'm gonna stop. But I was a first session lobbyist. This was my first time lobbying this session. So I'm young, work for the ACLU, I don't have to listen to you. Bill comes up, I got tired of that. Bill comes up with the Attorney General's office, and I'm like, okay, the Attorney General wants this, and I'm just one little person. You know, it's something that'll allow them to not tell you what's in lethal injection drugs. They'll just be able to, you know, they can disclose that information, they can hide that information. That was the bill. So they didn't want to talk, they didn't want to negotiate. I tried to meet with their lobbyists first, don't want to negotiate because ACLU, you can't kill it. So I don't have to negotiate with you. So I had to prove that, no, I can kill it. And so kill their bill, and then you come in the office the next day because it didn't come out of committee, and I get there and there's a call waiting on me from the head of the prison, or there's a call waiting on me from the Attorney General. I was like, me? Little me? Now you want to talk? Well, it's too late to talk because now I've won. But I'll listen, and guess what? Next time, they're going to call me. The next time they hear the ACLU has a problem with this bill, and they don't want it to come out, they're gonna say, oh, let me call her and see if we can negotiate because now I've shown I have power. We have to do that as a community. So that's my bit.
Before I, as a connection, get back to the two things that you started out with, Councilman Stamps and Attorney Bridges raised, I want to put 3 years on your minds and just have you to focus for a minute. 1870, 1915, and 1965. Just put a pin in those for me, okay? Then I'm gonna go back to something that's been on my mind ever since I sat in this chair. And I just left the meeting, and maybe that's why I'm of this mindset. I just left the meeting with women who represent 20 different women's organizations. We got ourselves together in 2013, and we decided to call ourselves STAND. Sisters Taking Action and Nurturing Decision Makers. And that came about because we collectively decided in our small conversations that when we go for our day at the Capitol, and we have Delta Day at the Capitol, Links Day at the Capitol, 100 Black Women Day at the Capitol, etc., 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 all we do is feed them,